So what we'll do is pick our reference point, and this is an opportunity for me to show you a really good tip whenever you're using the feature line tools and snapping to things in 3D. If you notice, as I'm about to click this endpoint, I'm actually about to snap to the wrong location, because down here where my coordinate readout is actually telling me I'm snapping to an elevation of 0. There's an easy way to get around that, and that's simply to just let my cursor snap to that location, but press the Tab key. And the Tab key is going to cycle me through the different possibilities of things that I can snap to. And when I see the object highlighted that I want to snap to, when I see the icon in the correct location, and I see the Z value down at the lower left coordinate readout, when all that is exactly where I want it to be, then I can click the point. And now I've set my reference point for that location. And now I want to take this object and raise this point using an elevation difference, type D for difference, of 0. I've just raised that point up to the exact elevation of the reference point. We've got a similar situation here with this curb. If the way it's graded right now, we've got a ½ foot elevation difference between these two curb lines, and we basically want to flatten that out to, again, create that ramping effect. So we're going to do something very similar. We'll do elevation by reference. Our reference point will be this endpoint, but once again we want to be very careful. Use my Tab key to make sure I'm snapping to what I need to be snapping to. Looking at the coordinate readout in the lower left, it's 738.65. That looks good, so that's my reference point. Select this object. I want to modify this point, and I want it to have a difference of 0. And once again, we've got a sharp change in grade because of the number of vertices in this feature line. We want to straighten that out from here to here. So we'll use the set grade slope between points, starting here at whatever elevation it is, to this point, whatever elevation it happens to be, a straight grade between the two, which ends up being about 4%. That's going to update that grading. So let's go ahead and rebuild the fine grading surface and see how these changes affect our contours. The next grading issue that we want to address is the fact that we've got a fairly flat area out here in front of the building. Right now this area will not drain well, so we need to create a low point at some location to drain this area. And the added challenge we have is that there really is no feature line in the fine grading site that will control grades in this area. So we're going to have to create our own new feature line to be able to control grades and elevations in this location. So to take care of that, we'll just go ahead and draw a new feature line. And I'm going to start it here, and I want it to match the curb line. And once again, I want to be careful that I'm snapping to the correct location. So I'm going to use my Tab key until I see the feature line itself highlight. Now I know I'm snapping to the feature line in the location that I want. So I'll click there, and it picks up an elevation of 737.98. And then I'm just going to continue using the grading object as a guide. I'm not really using its elevations, but I'm going to use its shape to guide me around the curve here. I'll pick a point here and say we're going to do a grade of 0, and then around the curve to this location, and we'll do a grade of 0 here as well. So we're basically holding the same elevation the whole way around the face of the building. The next thing we'll do is create a low point using a similar tool, or the same tool that we used before for the drive-through, insert high-low elevation point, and we'll use the feature line that we just drew. And from here to here, we want to create a low point in between, and this time we're going to grade at a -2 in each direction. We've got a larger area to drain. We want it to be a little bit more defined, and that's going to create the low point that we need. And then finally we'll add this feature line as a break line to our fine grading surface. And we want to make sure we supplement it so that we have enough data points along the length of that feature line. And we also have a curve in the feature line that we want to address with an appropriate mid-ordinate distance so that we get good definition along that curve. Click OK, select our feature line, and hit enter, and we should see the changes applied immediately and reflected in the contours. Okay. Now, addressing this issue has kind of brought another issue to light. We've really got some we're really kind of twisting and meshing a lot of different grades together in this area, and that often results in some jagged contours. We've got a lot of detail going on that's being defined by some very long, narrow triangles. If I were to turn on the triangulation for this surface, you would see some very long, narrow triangles crossing over this area of the parking lot. We've got a technique in surface modification that will address that for us, and that's called surface smoothing. So what I'm going to do is go into the fine grading surface, right-click Edits, and say I want to smooth the surface. And first thing I'll do is select my output region. And we've got a couple of different choices here. I can do a rectangle, a polygon, or I can do the entire surface. I'm interested in a specific area. It happens to be rectangular in shape, so rectangle works well. So I'm going to draw a rectangle, turn off my OSNAP so I can draw this exactly where I want it. And I don't want to cross over the curb lines. I want to stay inside the curb lines because the smoothing does not work well when you include drastic changes in elevation in it. So I'm going to do this area right here. I'm basically going to add additional surface points every 2 feet. That's the grid X and Y spacing that you're seeing here. And when I click OK, what the program is going to do is add a bunch of surface points that are going to smooth out the definition of the surface in this area. And as you can see, I get a much smoother result. The contours look much smoother, and the underlying surface data is in fact much smoother also. We've got an area to the south as well that could use some smoothing. So we'll do a similar operation there. I'll use a rectangular output region once again. And we'll try to take care of some of the jaggedness in the surface in this area. Again, being very careful to stay inside the curbs. I don't want to cross over the curb lines. And I'll go ahead and do the same spacing, 2 and 2. And that should smooth out our surface in that area as well. So to sum up what we've done, we've taken our kind of initial grading model. We've flattened out the drive-through entrance. That created a drainage problem, so we went ahead and created a low point. It also kind of modified our parking lot grading, so we fixed that up by straightening out the grades along this curb line. We also addressed some drainage issues in the front of the building. First of all, we set all the grades flat across the north face of the building. We fixed up the ramping of the pavement so that we've got that at-grade pedestrian access. We also created some elevations along this area, a low point here, so that we have a way to drain this north face of the building. And finally, we applied some smoothing in some areas where the triangulation was a bit rough. So our grading model is looking really good at this point.